Hi everyone. Soon it will be what is referred to as Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving, a holiday that is really meaningless. There's a lot of meaninglessness here in the United States. Oh, what is it about? It's about families getting together. And many actually have an awful lot of problems going to their families. They don't want to go, oh, but they go, and this one gets drunk, and oh, I have to deal with this sister or that brother or that uncle. Yeah, families have really turned into a nightmare as well. For the most part, I'm not talking about every family, but on the whole, families in America, well, they need a bit of work. They sure do. I have listened to friends talk about how they so don't want to go to their families for Thanksgiving, but they end up going, and they bitch and complain before they go. Then they go, then they come back, and they bitch and complain. They're never going to do it again. And then the next year, they go again. They repeat the same script. Nobody that I have known ever talks about the real meaning behind Thanksgiving. Hardly anyone even knows it. Everybody celebrates it, but what does it mean? Hardly anybody really gives thanks. It has come to be known as the day that Americans have permission to be gluttonous, to stuff their face. It's actually a day that symbolizes a tremendous amount of suffering for that turkey. But, oh, the turkey, it gets cooked, it's stuffed, it's put on the table. Nobody thinks about that turkey that they're eating. But nobody thinks about how many don't celebrate Thanksgiving. I haven't celebrated Thanksgiving in I don't know how long, 35 years maybe. It's, we get to learn so many lies. You know, as children, oh, the Pilgrims and the Indians, they got together and they were so friendly and they had a harvest and they ate together and they shared food and it was just wonderful because the Pilgrims were wonderful. Oh, yeah. Well, it's an utter lie. And those friends that I had, they knew it was a lie, but they never wanted to bring it up to their family because, oh, God forbid, they should speak the truth about that day. It's really, wow, it's a tragedy that, well, what we celebrate and how we celebrate Christmas, it's all about the gifts and materialism. Has nothing to do with Christ. It's not even his birthday. Nothing at all. No one even talks about Christ. They sing Christmas songs and try to one-up one another on the gift that they're giving to someone. And it's actually, you know, a day where domestic violence increases. In fact, years ago, I don't know if it's still true, but it was the day that marked the highest amount of domestic violence. It's a day that triggers an awful lot of sober alcoholics to start drinking. It's a day that brings about a tremendous amount of loneliness. It's a holiday that brings about tremendous stress for parents who don't have the money and want to buy the gifts for their children, but they just don't have it. And once again, it's also a day of drinking, getting drunk. Not for everyone, but for the majority. So Thanksgiving. I want to read this article written by John Whitehead. Don't just give thanks. Pay your blessings forward. God, sometimes I think back on all of the things that I've done. I would send out this email to friends about Thanksgiving, but it was all about, why don't you, as you're eating that turkey, think about all of the people who don't have the money for the turkey, who don't have family, who don't have a home, the homeless. Think about what the day really means for Native Americans. It's a day of mourning. Think about the property that you own and who was there on that land hundreds of years ago. And I never got a response. Never got a response. So, and I don't, I've been booted out of my family. I don't have family. So it really means nothing to me, Thanksgiving. But I get to hear so many talk about family and how they really feel about family. And it's so sad to me that nobody actually does the work to try to repair the discord in their families. It just goes on endlessly. So when you think about our government, how it can't resolve anything. For my 60 years, my God, the same issues just continue to get replayed over and over and over again. Nothing ever gets resolved. Well, that's deliberate. These congressional hearings, it's all a show to put on for the American people to believe that they actually have this, government and Congress is on it. Oh, they're having a hearing. Oh, people are testifying. Oh, it's marvelous, isn't it? To live in the United States of America, where we have freedom and a constitution, and we have none of this. None of it. Everybody just lives this pretend fantasy of a life. It's weird. It's just, weird is an understatement, to say the least. And then trying to get people out of this lie to live a real life. It's impossible. It has been impossible for me. And I have so often thought about what it would be like if those pilgrims, which, that's the official narrative of the day. Oh, the pilgrims out with the Indians. They didn't even call themselves pilgrims. They were separatists. They were brownists. They were the pilgrim thing came later, let's call them pilgrims. But I've often wondered what life would be like if the European settlers came to this portion of earth, this land, met with the native people, and really listened to them and observed how they lived. And if they were captured by it and said, we should take on their way of life instead of forcing the European way upon them. Their way. No lying. No lying. No betrayals. Keeping your word. Wow, life would be very different. So, there is much to be grateful for, but and another thing, I've never understood why we just mark one day. Hey, we're going to give thanks one day. How about doing it every day? Every day. Why should it just be designated for one day? Why make it about stuffing your face? We don't reflect on anything, Americans. Nothing. Nothing. No reflection. No serious thought. You know, holidays really should mark a time of great reflection. A time of thoughtfulness. A time of looking back. A time of reevaluation. Of how we've lived, if it's going to be one day a year, look at that year and really give thought to how you've lived your life. And was it a moral year for you? You know, did you give to those in need? Did you keep your word? Does your word mean anything to you? I don't know of one person that has, and I'm not saying they're not out there, but of those that I have known in my life, none of this was even on their radar. The importance of keeping your word. That your word is solemn. What an idea. Well, as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. John F. Kennedy. Once again, it's been a hard, heart-wrenching, stomach-churning kind of year. It's been a year of hotheads and blowhards and killing sprees and bloodshed and takedowns. It's been a year in which tyranny took a few more steps forward and freedom got knocked down a few more notches. It's been a year with an abundance of bad news and a shortage of good news. It's been a year of too much hate and too little kindness. It's been a year in which politics and profit margins took precedence over decency, compassion, and human kindness, all of which we are losing. So it's important to really give thought about how one lives on a daily basis. Be very aware of how you treat people. It's been a year in which politics and profit margins took precedence. Money is truly the only value that is actually lived. All the other values that Americans speak of, they're words. If they're not lived, they're words that we utter. And they're not lived. And I'm not talking about all. So for the sake of simplicity and ease for me. When I say Americans, I am talking about Americans on the whole. So if you're getting angry at me for things that I'm saying, you need to look at why you're getting angry. Because what I am saying is what a lot of people say. What I have observed about Americans, a whole lot of people have observed. And we are not a moral people. On the whole. I wish that wasn't the case, but it's true. We're not. And you know what I got throughout the years was everybody prefers the lie about Thanksgiving over the truth. And the truth is that this country started on a lie and it's ending on a lie. This country has not been around for a very long time compared to other countries. We're young still. We came about and we're dying quickly. You know, it's kind of like a lot of Americans today who are dying young because of how poisonous and toxic this country is. It didn't just come about in the last couple of decades. We've been lying forever. In the name of Christ, we can kill and rape and pillage and spread disease among the natives and kill them off and steal their children, throw them into Christian schools, cut their hair, and physically beat the hell out of them if they speak their native tongue in the name of Christ. Really? Have we ever resolved that? No. Most Americans, I don't want to look at that stuff. Oh, and the Indians, they were savages. No, we were the savage. The land grabbing that goes on in our country. That's what we do. That's what we are exceptional at. We started grabbing land, and now the land is being grabbed from a whole lot of ordinary Americans. Not the natives anymore, but everybody. So a lot of what we are living now, yeah, a lot of minorities in our country lived it. The natives know it. They know it. Now we find ourselves at this present moment, understandably overwhelmed by all that is wrong in the world and struggling to reflect and give thanks for what is good. It's not easy, and it's getting harder by the day. After all, how do you give thanks for freedoms that are constantly being eroded? How do you express gratitude for one's safety when the perils posed by the American police state grow more treacherous by the day? How do you come together as a nation in Thanksgiving when the powers that be continue to polarize and divide us into warring factions? Well, we're getting a good dose of what was given to the natives. We're beginning to feel what the native, the indigenous felt when the Europeans came. When you don't resolve the quote-unquote issues that you have, be it an individual or a whole people of a nation, those issues just keep going on. So, yeah, we started on a lie and we're ending on a lie. What an experience. Especially to be an American. Now, I don't say that because, oh, Americans are just so exceptional. Never bought that lie. But I say it because we were regarded as a people that had something that no other people had. And, you know, the great American experiment? Let the people rule. Well, we had that opportunity, and we utterly failed. Utterly failed. Why? We don't know what the truth is. Everything is just a lie. Americans live a lie. They live this pretense. They speak so highly of themselves, but they don't demonstrate it. They speak a lot of words, but they don't live those words. You know, you think about the European settlers, you think about, you know, the early years of this country when it was finally established. And everything was about betrayal. Signing treaties with the natives who didn't know how to read English. So they were just told what the contract was all about. They couldn't sign their name, so they signed an X or whatever. But they were signing away their freedom, their land, they were utterly betrayed with these outrageous lies. Over and over and over again. Sound familiar? Why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we experience what they experienced? Do we deserve better? Why? Why do we deserve to not have that happen to us? For what reason? What makes us so special? When we ignore the suffering of others, and oh, there's great suffering still going on today. Go down to the reservations. There's still betrayal today. The contracts, the agreements made. Some of those reservations have the poorest counties in the entire country. Do we ever even think of them? No. No, not even on Thanksgiving. Do we ever stand up for what's right for our native brothers and sisters? No. We ignore them. Oh, and then so many are just going to say, well, they're all alcoholics and they don't want to work. Oh, really? You break somebody's spirit. You give them nothing to work with. And then you expect them to just flourish. I love it. Thrive. When I lived in Massachusetts, Great Barrington, I'd walk through the forest. I'd go to what I considered to be my little Idaho. That my private Idaho, where there was this river and nobody was there and there was sand. It was in an oxbow area. Loved it, and I'd bring my dogs. And I would sit there and I'd look up at the hill and I would imagine, native boys. I'd imagine, the time period was hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and these native boys were out in the woods and coming across a deer or a wild animal, and how they would just be very, very still, observing the animal, be very, very quiet. And then comes crashing in the American boy who would want to kill it. Well, I've had a very different perspective of life, and my perspective has not been welcomed by many. We don't live right. We ain't right. And the only way to heal, because we are sick, the well-adjusted to a deeply disturbed society is nothing but a disturbed individual and a disturbed people. And the only way to heal is to get honest. That's why I regard truth as sacrosanct. That is the only way towards health, towards having a sane society, a society filled with people who are moral, living the words they speak. And suddenly, just even speaking those words, I actually feel like, wow, life would be regenerated and born again, not in the Christian sense. Just, it would bring meaning back to life. We're a bunch of dead zombies, working for the man, working for the boss, so we can buy TVs and big homes and cars, which is essentially, well, that was the American dream. That's over. It's gone. There is no more American dream. That's done. Curtain has come all the way down. Everybody's getting up, from their theater seats, and they're going home. But that's what it's all been about. Buying things, keeping up with the Joneses, and then surpassing them, being better than the Joneses, the baby boomers. Whoever dies with the most things wins. Greed is good. Yes, we are a sick society. And you can't be nothing but sick when everything is a lie and most of the people prefer the lie and get angry when you start speaking the truth. That's not a good people. So we all really have to take a look at ourselves, and then take a look at who we're going to visit tomorrow. Really take a good look at who you're sitting around with. And what are they about? What is your relationship with them about? Is it of substance? Or is it just something that you have in your life, like the TV that keeps you company? You know, really meaningless relations that, you know, a lot of people have just to get through, you know, this life. They hang on to them for dear life because they don't want to be alone. But from what I can see, a whole lot of people don't respect one another. They treat one another horribly. They behave in very immature ways. Nothing real serious about the relationship because there's nothing real serious about the individuals themselves. No, it's definitely not getting easier. It's getting harder by the day. Especially when we know that the United States of America is gone. It's gone. It is no longer. There is no Constitution. Every institution is thoroughly corrupt. Thoroughly. And when people talk about, you know, well, Trump 2020, or people say the law, bringing lawsuits is the only way to go, they're not getting that the individuals, first of all, Trump or Warren or whoever, it doesn't matter. The system is so thoroughly corrupted to the core, it's evil. The whole system needs to be brought down because no one person in that White House is going to fix anything. We know that the person in the White House is just merely, you know, a puppet who reads a script. You know, most Americans know that they don't have representatives in Congress, yet they keep voting for them. We really do need to take a look at everything that we do, all of our behavior, and start to really think about what this country has been about. So when you start really thinking about what this country has been about, it's been about violence, stealing resources and land, stealing from each other. It's been about it's kind of like when you look back, it's like we're a mockery of our own self, if you can understand that. I mean, the problems are so unbelievably, the list is so long. The list is so long. But they're under the umbrella of the lie. The lie. Thanksgiving, the lie. And it's such a horrible lie at that, considering what Thanksgiving is all about, and I may read an article about what Thanksgiving is all about. I want to live among healthy people. I want to live in a healthy nation. And that's why I will never stop speaking the truth. Because that's the only that's the only possible way of getting there. That's it, truth. Living honestly, speaking honestly, and making truth sacrosanct. With every passing day, the U.S. government more closely resembles an evil empire. It resembled that, for me, for decades. Governed by laws that are rash, unjust, and unconstitutional, policed by government agents who are corrupt, hypocritical, and abusive, a menace to its own people, and the antithesis of everything the founders hoped the government would be, a blessing to all the people. We're not just dealing with misguided government officials run amok. This is evil disguised as bureaucracy. This is what Hannah Arendt, I'm sorry, not sure if I've pronounced her name right, referred to as the banality of evil. And I posted a video on her writings. I may do it again. Evil has a broad spectrum, but still evil is evil. Evil is what happens when government bureaucrats unquestioningly carry out orders that are immoral and inhumane, obey immoral instructions unthinkingly, march in lockstep with tyrants, mindlessly perpetrate acts of terror and inhumanity, and justify it all as, I was just doing my job. And we have a lot of those. They think they're good people, but this is exactly who they are. Whether it's government related employment, or they're working for some corporation, that corporation is evil, committing evil. You can't separate yourself. There's no separation. If you're a cog in the wheel, you are keeping this system going. You keep the evil system alive by just doing your job. Well, that's what they want from you, to just do your job. You know, how many are working in the medical field? Ordinary Americans giving these kids vaccines. How many are working for insurance companies that are gutting the finances of Americans? How many are working in the public school system teaching Common Core? Watching these kids get destroyed by the Wi-Fi. The paycheck is what people value. The paycheck. That's it. We need to really start examining how we live, what we do. Otherwise, we're never, ever, ever going to get out of this trap. Oh, Carol, we can't get out of this trap. Oh, Carol, it's written in the Bible. Oh, Carol, Jesus is going to come back and do. Well, in the meantime, how about thinking about how you live? for your own soul. Doing one's job. To that list, let me add one more: a populace that remains silent in the face of wrongdoing. How many of you remain silent? What are you giving thanks to tomorrow? The turkey and the stuffing? What are you giving thanks to? Do you give thanks to anything? Or do you just show up, eat, and leave? What does this day mean to you? A life lived deliberately is a life well lived. A life of just showing up, not really taking anything seriously, just kind of waddling through until you die. Is it really worth living? We have to change ourselves. When good men and women do nothing, that's how evil prevails. That's how evil prevails. By doing nothing, by remaining silent, by being bystanders to injustice, hate, and wrongdoing, good people become as guilty as the perpetrator. There's a term for this phenomenon where people stand by, watch and do nothing, even when there is no risk to their safety, while some horrific act takes place, someone is mugged or raped or bullied or left to die. It's called the bystander effect. It works the same whether you're talking about kids watching bullies torment a fellow student on a playground, bystanders watching someone dying on a sidewalk, or citizens remaining silent in the face of government atrocities. Do you know how many of your fellow Americans are living on the street? Do you know how many homeless you have in your own community? Do you know how many Americans have been so destroyed that tomorrow will not be a good day for them? Do you think about that? Because it's really important to really start thinking about others. Others. All right, so what can you do about this bystander effect? I'm jumping over. Be a hero. Each of us has an inner hero we can draw upon in an emergency. Zimbardo, Philip Zimbardo, psychologist. If you think there is even a possibility that someone needs help, act on it. You may save a life. You are the modern version of the Good Samaritan that makes the world a better place for all of us. Zimbardo is the psychologist who carried out the Stanford prison experiment, which studied the impact of perceived power and authority on middle-class students who were assigned to act as prisoners and prison guards. The experiment revealed that power does indeed corrupt. The appointed guards became increasingly abusive, and those who were relegated to being prisoners acted increasingly submissive and depersonalized, taking the abuse and saying little in protest. Something happens to the individual when they don't live the words they speak, because they speak those words for the approval of others. They don't know who they are. They can't stand firm alone on principle. They don't even think about keeping their word. You know, remember decades ago? Your word is the most important thing in life. Your word. You keep your word. thinking about it, of all the people that I've had in my life, there's one person that I can say her word meant a whole lot. One. And I've had a lot of people in my life. It's just not important. What's important is the paycheck. What is the antidote to groupthink and the bystander effect? Be an individual. Listen to your inner voice. Take responsibility. If you find yourself in an ambiguous situation, resist the urge to look to others and go with your gut instinct. If you think there is even a possibility that someone is in need, act on it. At worst, you will embarrass yourself for a few minutes. But at best, you will save a life. So, there's a lot of people in need in every community in this country now. And I have posted videos where I've said, if you know of somebody who is really hurting financially and just lost their job, and you show up. You don't wait. You don't wait for someone to come asking or begging you for help. You show up. And you say, is there anything that I can do? And you say, you're there for them if they do need help. We in America turn the other way. We don't want to see it because it interrupts our way of living. Well, our way of living got us here, so we need to change that way. So even if people recognize that they are witnessing a crime, they may still fail to intervene if they do not take personal responsibility. Kitty, Genovese, baby boomers. The problem is that the more bystanders there are, the less responsible each individual feels. In other words, recognize injustice. Don't turn away from suffering. Refuse to remain silent. Take a stand. Speak up. Speak out. All it takes is one person breaking away from the fold to change the dynamics of a situation. Once anyone helps, then in seconds others join. Like there was a few years ago in Florida, a family of 6, 4 adults and 2 young boys were swept out to a sea by a powerful rip current in Panama City Beach. There was no lifeguard on duty. The police were standing by waiting for a rescue boat. The few people who had tried to help ended up stranded as well. Those on shore grouped together and formed a human chain. It started with 5 volunteers, grew to 15, then 80, some of whom could not swim. And this is the human chain that they started to save 9 people. Started by this woman. And what she says here, there's so much fighting about politics and everything. But she said there were so many races on that beach and everybody came together. People like to help. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if this is how we lived? Wow, I'd give thanks every single day. Every day. Coming together. Regardless of sex, regardless of race, regardless of religion, because we all have commonalities that we can put all of that aside and come together. But we don't. We don't. We don't even come together to save people. Yeah, we will let them die. We will let people die. And people get angry at me when I start talking like this, and they say, "What do you expect us to do? Tell us what we're supposed to do." I've over the years, I have said so many things. You know, organize with others, bring, into your home your neighbors for coffee and pie or whatever, and talk about things that you could do in your community to make it better. I wanted to start a website where people could just donate $1 or $5 and get a whole, even if it was, can you think, just imagine a place where someone could go and drop $1 a month into like a bank account, a website, and they really trusted that person to help those in need. So let's say it was 1/3 of the American population. I don't believe we're at 3 million. So let's put it down, well, let's just keep it at 3 for, simplicity's sake. 1/3, 100 million every month. Do you know how many people could still be in their homes? Do you know how many people would be off the street? Do you know how many animals would be lifted from their suffering? But what happens when trust is destroyed? You don't have trust, so you don't have that foundation to build anything worthy. And I hate to say this, because a lot of people will think, oh, I'm, whatever you think, I don't care. I mentioned, if anybody, wanted to donate, they could certainly do that. I got 2 donations, 2. And how many have viewed this? 1,436. 2. Is there something wrong here? I'm speaking objectively. Yeah, there's something wrong. There's something wrong. And I would hope that everybody, certainly in this community, takes life seriously. So regardless of what you're doing tomorrow, I don't celebrate. I actually think about this stuff all the time, but whatever you're doing, carve some time out and think about how you're living your life. And start thinking about what you could be doing to help others that you don't do. Think about how you can change. So that the world would be a better place if you did make those changes. And think about the fact that we are all connected. Yeah, we really are. But when you realize that you truly are surrounded by people and they claim to love you, but it's just a mere word, they don't live it. I know that a lot of you, your families have left you to die. I know what that feels like. But then you're surrounded by an awful lot of people who also don't really care about you. They may speak it, but it's a word that they're not living. And they too will leave you to die. So when we say things like life is precious, I say not. I say life is precious when I can see that it's precious for you. That you're not stepping over that homeless person lying on the sidewalk. That you can't just walk past that person who's really in need and just ignore them and say, oh, wow, what a shame. And think that you're a good person. You know, how many animals have you walked past that needed a little bit of kindness or food? There's so many ways in which we can give. And I see so many. They just don't. So, yeah, we have to change ourselves. We have to come together. We've got to figure out ways to help one another. And those ways are, well, easy. The hard part is getting people together. So there is a moral here for what needs to happen in this country if we only can band together and prevail against the riptides that threaten to overwhelm us. Many here have already been overwhelmed. Some have been overwhelmed, live rather miserable lives. They're not miserable people. They're living miserable lives. And they still keep going, doing everything that they possibly can to keep the truth alive, to get the information out there. And so many don't really help them out. I'm not talking about everyone. I'm not talking about everyone. When I hear people talking like me, I don't get upset. I don't get angry at all. Because I know that I am doing everything that I possibly can. I know it. And I can say that without doubt, without equivocation. I know it. But I also know a lot of people don't. So when I hear people talking the truth about the American people on the whole, I don't get angry. I might have decades ago, but I saw a lot of this early on. The greatest, most dangerous lie is the lie that you tell yourself about yourself. The pretense that you live. Most people don't want to go to that lie. They select out the truth. That truth that's happening to us collectively, not the individual truth. Anyone who's not looking into their own self, you're not looking inward, getting to your own truth, you ain't serious. You ain't a serious person. You're not living life seriously. You don't take things seriously. Not until you look inside. Do you really begin to change and also begin to recognize, wow, it really does matter that I live the words I speak. So instead of just giving thanks this holiday season with words that are too soon forgotten, why not put your gratitude into action with deeds that spread a little kindness, lighten someone's burden, brighten some dark corner, pay your blessings forward in whatever way makes sense to you. This is something that everyone can do, no matter how tight our budgets, how crowded our schedules. Engage in acts of kindness, smile more, fight less, build bridges, refuse toxic politics that define your relationships. Focus on the things that unite instead of that which divides. Be a hero, whether or not anyone ever notices. Do your part to push back against the meanness of our culture with conscious compassion and humanity. But unless you take a look inward, do that reflection, do that self-examination, matching your words with your action, that they actually begin to integrate. You cannot integrate your own self, your own soul. You'll speak a lot of stuff about how compassionate and caring you are, but it will never be genuine. It will never be real. So to get to that conscious compassion and humanity takes a lot of work. The genuine compassion takes a lot of work. And when you do that work, you'll go, wow, what a difference. What a difference a little self-reflection makes. Because the care and compassion you have after doing some of that work, you get to feel it like a power that moves you, motivates you, moves you to take action because you can't not. It's a power, it's a force that comes about kind of, well, organically. There ain't no manufacturing of it because it just wells up in you. And it's there. And it moves you forward to take action. You don't sit and debate. Should I do something? No, because I'm not going to be approved of, so I won't. Moods are contagious, the good and the bad. They can be passed from person to person, so can the actions associated with those moods, the good and the bad. Even holding the door for someone or giving up your seat or on a crowded train, acts of benevolence. But also volunteering at a soup kitchen or donate to a charity that does good work, take part in local food drives, take a meal to a needy family, adopt an elderly person at a nursing home, advocate for the creation of local homeless shelters in your community. Urge your churches and synagogues and mosques to act as rotating thermal shelters for the homeless during the cold winter months. Support groups like the Rutherford Institute that are tirelessly working to advance the cause of freedom. In other words, help those in need. I know that fixing what's wrong with this country is not going to happen overnight. There may not be much we can do to avoid the dismal reality of the police state in the long term. Not so long as the powers that be continue to call the shots and allow profit margins to take precedence over the needs of people. And that is what's going on. Money over needs of people. And we've always been this way. And it needs to change. Because that is evil. No ands, ifs, or buts. It's evil to put money over people. And more do it. Why? Because society approves. American society approves. We've become that throwaway society. Oh, well, just put the elderly in a nursing home. To hell with them. I don't want to inconvenience myself by having to take care of a family member. Put the kids on psychiatric medication. I don't want to deal with them being children. There are things we can do right now to make this world kinder, less hostile, more just. On a larger scale, we need to stop being silent bystanders to our nation's downfall. Historically, this bystander syndrome, in which people remain silent and disengaged, mere onlookers in the face of abject horrors and injustice, has resulted in whole populations being conditioned to tolerate unspoken cruelty toward their fellow human beings. That's what's going on. There's a cruelty now, and no one cares. Really think about whether or not you care. Do you really care? Do you really care about what's going on? Do you care about all of the people who have been destroyed? Do you care about the people who have been left to suffer? Or do you just speak that word? Do you just speak it? So that care that you have, can you demonstrate evidence of it? Can you tell us what you do for those in need? Because that's what it comes down to. Can you back it up with the actions that you have taken? So, this is the horror show for me to watch. What could have been great get destroyed. And it's getting destroyed because we have way too many people sitting around, silently disengaged, mere onlookers, doing nothing in the face of abject horrors and injustice. Whole populations being conditioned to tolerate unspoken cruelty toward their fellow human beings. Crucifixion and slaughter of innocents by the Romans, the torture of the Inquisition, the atrocities of the Nazis, the butchery of the fascists, the bloodshed of the communists, the cold-blooded war machines run by the military-industrial complex. And whatever you call this great American experiment that died a long time ago, with more and more Americans so in need, being left to die. I swore never to be silent whenever and wherever human beings endure suffering and humiliation. stated Elie Wiesel, we must always take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented. Sometimes we must interfere when human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy. National borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Whenever men or women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place must at that moment become the center of the universe. Now, some might hear that as, oh, Elie Wiesel, he was for the New World Order. National borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Everything becomes irrelevant when you are facing injustice and suffering. That's a cat who needs to go to the vet. If you can hear the sneezing and coughing. Okay, so we got here because we were not engaged. So we have to figure out a way to engage with these problems that we face. And no, I don't believe that we're going to turn around this police state and return to what this country used to be even just a few decades ago. I believe our country is over, done. The great American experiment is dead. And hang on. Sorry for the interruption. Yes, the American experiment is dead. This country is over. The New World Order is absolutely being established, and this is where we're headed because we do not have the numbers of people who want to get out of that lie. But that doesn't mean that that should give you permission to sit back and do nothing. You need to take action for your own soul. For your own soul. And you need to do the work to change how you live. Because great suffering is now here. And it's growing wide, and it's not stopping. And more, every single day, the amount of life that is suffering now just continues to increase on a daily basis. We need to change. We need to become a community. We need to reach out. We need to figure out how to make this time less a burden. We need to figure out a way to lift people up. We need to figure out a way to help those who are suffering the consequences of this evil. And I will say this. If you don't reflect on your life, and I mean in a serious manner, I'm not talking about, oh, it's Thanksgiving, so let me do a real fast recap on this past year and what do I have to give thanks for? Well, I guess I'll say what I said last year. No, I mean serious thought to how you live, what you do, to make this world a better place, not just for you, but for everybody. Not just for your family, but for everyone. How do you change the world? You be that change you want to see. I made a deliberate decision. I needed honesty. I wanted to hear honesty. I wanted to have honest relationships. I wanted to trust people. I wanted that change. I can say I live it. I speak it. Well, think about what this great American experiment would have been had the European settlers came over and said, you know what? Those Indians, they have something here. I think we should follow their example and set up communities and, and, and really listen to what they have to say, because they might just be onto something. Ciao, guys.